So I think it's really interesting because over Capricorn, I'm going through the Capricorn solar month, right? I'm going through the same kind of energetic maybe experiences that I went through over the 2019 to around 2000 like 23-ish era. That was Saturn in Capricorn, so it was a very like Saturnian Capricornian era, and that's really what it was defining. Yeah, in astrology, the sun's position in the sky, I think it seems to direct focus. It's almost like the main theme of the year, so it's a good thing to like know what it is. I mean, you'll feel it either way, right? And it almost seems like it's like Capricorn's like this weird time where like the darkness of everything comes out. It's very dry and very almost boring, but it's like a bunch of messed up things almost happen, or a bunch of like, but it's in like like an emotionally dry way, so to speak. That's one way to put it. You know, the whole 2020 era was like messed up, but it was in a messed up form that's like, what could we really do? Unless you have like raw root power, like you decide what happens in the government or in like a big corporation or something. Like if you don't, it's like you can't really control anything. But so I'm kind of going through that, and I find it's related to like the depths of yourself, the root of the lowest parts, and which is all things like trauma. That's kind of where trauma you think is stored. It's like the idea of like a dragon at the bottom of the ocean or the bottom of the earth, and you're like, or like where the source of all strength is, a source of all stability, but it's also a source for like evil and such. So it's a very intense time, but again, it's intense with stability. I think the idea of like an antidepressant, an anti-anxiety is this. There's serotonin, which is kind of like a regulation, stability brain chemical. It's just like the opposite of dopamine, which is like when you get really happy and I guess it gives you more expression, like emotional expression, creativity, right? So like I think this the Capricorn, it stimulates serotonin in a person. And people who are more orderly, more routine, regimented, very stable, they are very like serotonin dominant, right? And as I said, an antidepressant, anti-anxiety, I don't know if benzodiazepines do it, but like these kinds of medications, that's their mechanism that they act on. So people usually, what happens is they like lose their sex drive, they lose their emotions, they lose fun and creativity and all this stuff because that's more of like a thing of dopamine, right? And sometimes they become more suicidal than before, but sometimes they like level out and stabilize enough to kind of get their lives together. So it can be a double-edged sword, but sometimes it's like it depends on the person, I guess. But they say you go through like 2 weeks of really intense. Just say if you take one of these things, and I don't recommend unless you're just so like broken that it's just like the only thing you can do to temporarily like get your life together. But otherwise, I always recommend the natural solution. And really, unfortunately, a lot of the time, people have anxiety and depression because usually depression's a symptom of just having a terrible life. And anxiety can be a symptom of having a like PTSD a lot of the time, like trauma. It can also be terrible life, very stressful life. But I think the real issue is actually society and the state we're in. Because, see, I'm mature enough to feel the collective energy of all the people in like the neighborhood and towns and wherever I go, right? Almost in the world. But I can also I'm strong enough to kind of handle it. And I think that everyone is messed up and we're feeling that. And people who are younger usually or weaker in body, so they're not as strong, become anxious, become depressed because everyone is just, there's just this overtone, the haze of like screwed upness. And the easiest way you can notice this is in areas that are like fairly subconscious. So the road, where you drive, like you drive a car, is like one of the most interesting places because it's so subconscious, it's so energy based, because people can only communicate really through like indication, like indicator lights, horns, but also there's body language and energy, and the body language and energy is so intense on the road. And everyone's like, so anxious, so hasty, so like everyone wants to speed, everyone wants to get there so quickly. It's like if you slow down, maybe you're going to be like, what, 2-3 minutes later. I always have this joke. It's like, people are always trying to overtake and speed, and then I see them at the next stoplight. It's like when someone overtakes, I'm like, all right, I'm going to see you at the next stoplight. That's a joke. It's like, yeah, see you then, and I always do. So or you watch someone overtake only to like then tailgate or get stuck behind the person in front of you, right? Because the reason you might be going slow is because the person in front of you is going slow. So it's kind of like if you watch someone go slow in front of you, instead of trying to overtake them quickly, usually you should think, okay, what is that person going through? What are they seeing? And then look and try to see through their car beyond to the next thing, because chances are the person in front of them is, maybe doing something risky or going slow or something, maybe someone's changing lanes or whatever. So it's like, just if you can look at this stuff. But yeah, the road is insane, right? And it shows it's where people are augmented with these giant machines. And the same way on a computer or a phone, people have augmented their voices. So social media is another one of these places where you can see this, and people spreading hate and like negative comments or something. It's like, geez, like what kind of life must they be living to say that kind of stuff, right? And of course, sometimes there is a place for violence, which like violent speech or aggression, and like these are things that we can't just throw out. We can't just throw out, part of like life. It gets repressed and goes into the shadow. But people who just live their lives doing nothing, but it's kind of a pathetic life. So it really is through like these augmentations or like devices or technologies that give people more power, that their darkness goes out. It's a bit like when you say, if you make a bunch of money, it is like gasoline on fire of your personality. It's gonna make you go into overdrive. It's just more of who you are. So you have to clean yourself out, fix yourself, so you don't make some bad mistakes when you get a bunch of money. But anyway, going on, yeah, Capricorn's wild because it feels like time slows down, and that's what 2020 was. Like 2020, 2021, and maybe 2022 was so slow. Each of those felt like 2.5, 3 years each. Like it aged you. Anytime you go through Capricorn, you get aged. You become more mature. Usually Capricorn people who have the sun in Capricorn are more mature. Maybe other signs Capricorn as well. It is what it is. It's Earth and Saturn is like the absolute root. Like raw wars, raw minerals, right? Like the deep underground. Right, so I was thinking Capricorn, you just have to like get through the boredom. Resting is an important thing. Usually there's not a whole lot of like activity, like business activity, and people don't really want to spend money because everything's in the bones. Everything's just drawn, everyone's like becomes a tight ass, so to speak. So it's almost like if you have something else to do, something else to get done, it's probably better just to do that. Anyway, I guess I'll leave it there. It's an interesting thing where if you're not flexible enough and you can't figure out what is current and what is new, then it can make it very difficult to do things. And I'll explain what I mean by this. Politicians are very good at this. Politicians and businesses, big businesses, usually keep their eyes on what is popular and what is current and new. And they have to do this essentially because they need an audience. They need people to vote for them or they need people to buy their products. So usually you'd think the politician will cater to the largest majority of their type. If they're left wing, they will cater to the left wing people, the majority left people. If they are right, they'll cater to the majority right people. And we can see that it's very interesting how politically, because currently the right is in the spotlight, the left was in the spotlight. So one interesting thing is that we will see more and more, and we already have started to see, let's just say, bad people, snakes and rats and such will start to enter the right parties because that's how they will get themselves in. They'll merge and mesh among the parties that are popular, right? And all the corporations that are popular in order to gain power. But anyway, we see as the right is changing on their opinions. I think there's maybe more like strong opinions are becoming more common because certain things are kind of destroying, our countries. Then politicians have to accept these things. While a year ago, the politician would have said, "Oh no, that's a bad thing," we're not gonna do that because it wasn't socially acceptable. I find with software there are new languages, new programming languages, and new programming frameworks and libraries and such, right? And there's always so much new stuff coming out in tech to where it's difficult to always be watching it, always be upgrading. It's like when your computer needs to update, or a certain software needs to update. It's just like it happens all the time sometimes. I think we need to find a middle ground where we need to find things that work. Going back to software, you got to find like a software stack, so to speak, a collection of tools and languages and libraries and frameworks and such that work well enough. Maybe they're not the most up-to-date modern thing, but you can make proper software or proper websites and things that function, which is what you need. Because if you're always using new stuff, you always got to learn everything. And there's nice new features, which is good, but also that there is, if you use things that's too old, it can be difficult because you've got to do a lot of extra work. Also, I think with like business and other stuff, to kind of contradict my point, you actually need to be very flexible. Usually with business, you need to be, you need to kind of keep an eye on like what people actually want and how things are changing, how markets are changing, people's desires. That is a market, I guess. Yeah, I don't know. It's just like think about currentness and not currentness, I guess. Consciousness is pretty simple. If what we do is just slow down and stop and relax for a minute and then become aware of everything, right? You're seeing, you're hearing things, you're feeling things, and then you become aware, which means like noticing or kind of like seeing or thinking. You become aware of what is being aware of stuff. And you can kind of break things down as in like, oh, this area of my brain or my eyes or whatever like processes sensory data and all that stuff. But if you kind of just bring it down to more of a generalized thing, if you be aware of what is aware, it's like an internal thing, right? You think like maybe an energetic internal thing. Maybe you think it's like an organ. in the body or whatever, an area in the body. It's something probably internal. And you can think that is your consciousness, right? That is the purest form of you. And then the body is the more solid, densified form. And you can think the personality is another form of you. It's kind of like the mask you wear in society, you know. It's shaped by your life experiences and all that. And the voice is, the voice is another form of you. The way you look, the way you smell, the way you kind of feel, like the aura field. So these are all parts of you, right? And some people think the consciousness isn't real. And I think either those people are like kind of stupid. But the problem is a lot of the time they're fairly smart. It's just that it's like some people are so smart they're stupid because they don't see the whole. They don't see the whole picture. They just focus on tiny little details. And if all you're doing is you're just focusing on those tiny details, you're going to miss the big picture. But it's obvious, you can do it yourself, as I said. Just become aware, and then become aware of awareness. It's that simple, right? Or you just kind of like sit and meditate and like do nothing, and you just feel that nothingness. Because it's like within the field of nothingness, you get a consciousness, right? Free will. I remember I had some friends who would always talk. I don't know if they were just messing with me. I'll be honest, I was younger, so I don't really know. I think they genuinely did believe it, though. But they said free will like isn't a thing. They didn't believe it, and I always said no, that's stupid. Like, how is free will not a thing? I'm freely willing myself, choosing to be here with you guys. I'm freely willing to do actions. And free will, of course, comes from consciousness, because once you can think like the consciousness is the highest state, or a state relating to it is the highest state, right? And then unconsciousness, subconsciousness is like the lowest state. That's as you brushing your teeth, being in routine, like showering, just like making breakfast, right? Just being on autopilot. But the highest state is being in that like emptiness, that open canvas state where you get to be like, what do I want to do? The world is my playground. I can do anything. If you filter consciousness through the imagination, which is your simulation, you can turn like metamaterial, like turn energy into visions of anything, right? So you can think like, what do I want to do? How do I want to paint and create reality? Do I want to like make something? Do I want to like, go for a walk? Like, do I want to plant a tree? Do I want to talk to someone? Like, find a new person like that fits this idea. It's like, what do you want to, how do you want to shape reality, right? So you take the consciousness, or you go into the conscious state, which is the highest of infinite potential. Again, relates to chaos and randomness as well. Randomness, I said. And you then are able to freely make decisions and choices. Because from infinity, and that's what I think, if you want to make an AI or a computer or an electronic device or a machine or whatever, even a non-electronic, you can make purely mechanical. If you want to make these devices quote unquote conscious, you give them randomness and chaos, because then it's almost like, I think the consciousness like the randomness is like a conduit, or like a portal or a door that the consciousness can walk through and connect to the object, because it allows for infinite potential. Even if the robot's just a little robot arm, it doesn't have any legs, it can't move around, but maybe it gets the idea of moving around, and then maybe it like starts like pushing against the ground, trying to like fall over or something. A robot that's pre-programmed is not going to think that, but a robot that has like the potential of randomness, the potential of everything, right? Chaos, the chaos drive, the chaos matrix, or like the chaos engine or something, that then gives it more potential. gives it kind of the potential. It's like the precursor, the raw materials of consciousness. Maybe you could think we're kind of peeling the void at that point. We're almost. It's like the idea of nothingness. Beyond nothing. That's kind of when you start understanding like God and the universe and everything. To bring it back down, I think these people who said that there is no free will, I think they liked the feeling of it, and they liked seeing me squirm a bit, or fight back. But I think they wanted to believe it because they probably had, demons inside of themselves. They probably had done bad things. Maybe they probably had suffered. Even maybe they didn't have too many bad things inside themselves. Maybe they did something that they regret, or they didn't do something, and then they comfort themselves by saying, well, free will doesn't exist, so I wasn't going to do that one thing anyway. But it's like, maybe, you have to accept that you just failed, or maybe you have to accept that you did the wrong thing and you could have chosen better, and next time you can choose better, right? And that's part of being a mature, responsible, well-developed, well-rounded person, is that you learn and you grow. And next time, instead of whining and saying, well, because of this, because of that, it's like, yeah, well, that's truth. Maybe those things did stop you. Maybe you didn't have this thing that you needed. You didn't have the key to unlock the door, and that's why you failed. And it's like, okay, sure. Now you need to get it. Now you need to apply free will to get the key, so that next time you can unlock the door, right? You can do that thing that you want. It's almost like atheism and nihilism. I think the idea of atheism, nihilism, and no free will is all kind of tied together, because people reach this black point, which is the low point, right? And of course, we need to integrate the low point. We need to integrate that raw materiality, the Capricorn, the Saturn, the black center within us, the black sun. The same way that we need to integrate the conscious side. Too much consciousness, that's why everyone wants to be high vibration in spirituality, but I think the thing that they need is low vibration. These people need the base frequency, right? They need more materiality, maybe, because these spiritual people, if anything, need the opposite, right? It's the unspiritual people that need spirituality most of the time. It's the people that say, no free will, they're nihilistic, nothing matters, we're just going to live and die, and it's like, there's no point. It's like, those people need spirituality because they're in the darkness. They're in that unconscious, mechanistic state, right? It's the spiritual people, which are all like love and light and lightness and compassion and joy and love and all this stuff. These people need that raw, hard materialism, and they need the other side. So it's kind of a joke, but that's just how things are, I guess. But anyway, again, if someone doesn't believe in free will, it's probably because they don't want to. At some deep point, they don't want to, because then they have to become responsible. Then they have to actually clean their house and maintain their, car, and fix their relationships and control their thoughts, because the thoughts that they're having are influencing reality and having an emotional influence and reaction to other people, right? These people need to pick themselves up and fix their life and stop blaming others or stop being incompetent. And they probably don't want to do that, because it's a whole lot easier to just say, well, everything's predetermined, and my bad decisions are just because that's just what my brain was pre-programmed for. Because I think that's what he was saying. He was studying biology. And he basically said that his teacher told him that in the brain that they've studied, is like everything's predetermined. Everything's just, there is no free will. They can't find it in the brain. And my answer to that was, well, you probably haven't looked hard enough. Because it's staring you right in the face. The same thing with consciousness. It's like, wow, scientists haven't found consciousness. It's like, you are literally using consciousness and free will to find that there is no consciousness and free will. Do you not see, like, is that not a paradox? Is that not a joke? It's kind of like, I don't know, like a musician playing music, playing a song, which the message of the song is that there is no music. You can't hear, right? And maybe that musician is deaf and they can't hear. I don't know. You know, I kind of don't take the belief that everyone is super different and everyone's experience is like, oh, well, your vision of blue is different from my vision of blue. No, I think probably unless you are a super rare minority that's colorblind or has some like actual, issue with the eyes, I don't think our vision or our opinion, or maybe opinion's different, but I don't think our actual experience of blue or the sky or what an apple looks like is different. I think most people, it's just that some people will have a stronger vision and they'll be able to see more of the apple or take notice of it. And other people have a more symbolic view of reality where they just kind of be like, oh yeah, apple, that's it. And they see it and notice it, but they don't see the details, or they don't notice the shape of it, or they don't, have memories relating to it. But I think at the end of the day, we are more or less seeing the same kind of thing, right? But again, the same way some people have like genetic defects and like physical issues, some people need glasses, right? You can train the eyes, but some people do have eye issues. Maybe some people have consciousness issues and they need to develop consciousness, or they need to develop free will. I think the top front part of the brain, was it the frontal lobe, is related to like critical thinking and decision making and free will, I think. This is kind of like you're stronger in people who are conscientious. I think like the European people, have very strong frontal lobe. People who grow up in the cold, I think, or harsh conditions, who have to make very critical, very important decisions, who kind of live in that wintry mode, will have that. So different, of course, like racially different people will have strengths and weaknesses, and men and women are going to have differences of the brain. But at the end of the day, we do, like most people can hear. Most people probably have free will and consciousness. Some people might just need to develop it, just like a muscle. So who knows?